Hello, and welcome to Soft Histories. I'm so glad you're here. Whether your thoughts are tangled from a long, noisy day, or you're simply seeking a quiet moment before sleep, tonight we'll take a slow walk through the unnoticed rhythms of your daily life, those quiet, looping patterns you may never have questioned, but which quietly guide your every step. We'll gently untangle the hidden stories of psychological loops, those soft circuits of behavior that echo through your days like footsteps in a dream, the silent mechanics behind your habits, the little rituals of comfort, control, and identity. Nothing loud, nothing rushed, just you, your breath, and a river of soft scientific wonder. Where are you listening from tonight, wherever that is? I'm grateful to be there with you. If this space brings you peace, consider subscribing. It helps more wandering minds find their way here. Now, take a deep breath in, slowly exhale, and let's begin our quiet journey into the unseen engines of habit, the loops that live beneath awareness. We begin in a place you know intimately but rarely visit consciously: your morning. Not the events of it, the feeling of it, that blur between sleep and wakefulness. When your body moves before your thoughts do, when your hand reaches toward the same light switch, the same toothbrush, the same mug. This repetition is not laziness. It is not thoughtlessness. It is, in fact, the mind at its most efficient, weaving memory, prediction, and motion into a quiet choreography of familiarity, a kind of psychological autopilot built to protect your limited attention. The brain conserves energy by rerouting well-worn paths. The more often you walk a trail, the easier it becomes to walk again until one day you don't even notice you've begun. These loops are not born suddenly. They are crafted like riverbeds carved slowly by water. What begins as choice becomes preference, then expectation, then habit, and then it becomes invisible, a part of the background, the quiet clockwork ticking underneath your every day. Scientists call this procedural memory, the subconscious storage of actions that no longer need conscious thought. But perhaps it's more poetic to think of it as a second self, the part of you that rises before you do, that dresses you in yesterday's feelings, and lays out today's actions like clothes on a chair. This second self is not good or bad. It is not a villain to be fought, nor a saint to be worshipped. It is simply a loop made of attention, reward, and repetition. Its power lies in its invisibility, for the things we do without noticing are often the things that shape us most. So consider this: how many of your daily movements are truly new? How many are echoes? When you unlock your phone, pour your drink, tie your shoes, check the time. Are you there? Or are you simply passing through a familiar tunnel? This is the quiet beauty and the gentle danger of habit loops. They create stability, predictability, and peace, but they also dull the edges of experience. When a moment becomes a copy of the last, it loses its spark. The present becomes a shadow of the past. And yet, we need these loops. They hold us together. They let us function in a world that demands too much. They let us reserve our attention for what truly matters, or what we believe matters. But what if, just for tonight, we paid attention to the loop itself? Not to judge, not to fix, but simply to notice. In that noticing, something soft begins to shift. The loop becomes visible, and when something becomes visible, it can also be changed. We'll keep walking gently. There's no rush, only layers to unfold, truths to warm your hands by. In the next section, we'll follow your footsteps into a moment so common it slips right past you, yet speaks volumes about the mind's love of rhythm and control. In the quiet moments of your morning or just before sleep, there is an action so routine, so automatic, that you likely don't even feel it happen anymore. The squeeze of the tube, the soft rasp of bristles, the rhythmic sway of arm and wrist. Brushing your teeth, a task that hums with predictability, becomes a ritual that's far more than it seems. But underneath that minty foam is something older, more mysterious, a whisper of ritual, of mental anchoring, of internal alignment. This is not just hygiene, it is grounding, a soft return to self. Psychologists have found that the brain loves rhythm, not just in music, but in motion. The brain maps repetitive movement onto feelings of security and control. When you brush your teeth, your brain is not just cleaning, it is rehearsing safety, rehearsing being alive. It's a loop that soothes. The sound, the sensation, even the scent, they create a sensory map your brain recognizes. And in that recognition, it relaxes, because you've done this before. You'll do it again. And for a few brief minutes, the unpredictability of life is replaced with a small, controlled dance between you and your mirror. Neurologically, this process engages multiple networks at once: motor skills, procedural memory, even tiny bursts of dopamine, a reward loop that rewards not the result, but the act itself. The action is its own affirmation, a quiet yes in a world full of noise. There's also something deeply poetic in the way we return to this task every morning and night, like bookends. Brushing marks the beginning and the end, the opening and closing of consciousness. In the morning, it signals the world that you are ready. At night, it tells your body that you are done. But here's what's more subtle even when you travel. Even when your days change, this loop often remains. You may forget your phone charger or your socks, but rarely your toothbrush. And when you brush in a strange hotel bathroom, something feels familiar again. It's a way of saying, yes, I am still me. I am still here. This ritual also speaks to identity. We do not brush our teeth because we enjoy it, not exactly. We brush because of who we believe we are. I'm the kind of person who takes care of myself. In this way, habits are not just actions, they are silent reinforcements of the self. You might think of it like this, and each brush stroke is a stitch in the fabric of your identity, a gentle reweaving of the story you tell yourself about who you are, over and over, twice a day, without words, without fanfare, just you and a mirror and the quiet ticking of a loop that holds you together. And yet the moment you decide to skip it, the loop speaks louder, a discomfort, a fuzziness not just in your mouth, but in your mind. Something feels undone because the loop expects to complete. That's what it does. That's what it needs. So tonight, when you brush your teeth, or tomorrow, if it's too late now, try something different. Don't rush. Don't tune out. Just notice. Notice the texture, the temperature, the motion. Notice the you that's always been there behind the motion, behind the mirror. In these micro moments of awareness, habit becomes ceremony, and ceremony connects us to meaning. We'll keep going, slowly. In the next section, we'll follow the quiet trail of something even deeper, the way your brain rewards you for tiny wins, and how it quietly teaches you to come back, again and again, to the same familiar loops. There is a soft tug behind your actions, one that whispers rather than shouts. It doesn't announce itself, but it guides you, like a trail of breadcrumbs through a forest of choices. Dopamine leaves its invisible markers behind, gently coaxing you along familiar paths. Dopamine is often misunderstood. People call it the pleasure chemical. But that's only a shadow of the truth. It doesn't reward you for what you've done, it lures you toward what you might do next. It is the signal of anticipation, of promise, of potential, a chemical compass that doesn't point to true north, but to the next flicker of desire. When you open your favorite app, take the first sip of coffee, or check if a message has arrived, that's dopamine guiding your hand, not with command, but suggestion. A gentle nudge that says, maybe something good is coming. This is how loops form, not because an action is fulfilling, but because it once was, or because your brain believes it might be again. Dopamine doesn't need you to be happy, only to be curious, only to reach. In lab studies with mice, scientists discovered something strange. The highest dopamine spikes didn't come from rewards that were guaranteed, they came from unpredictable ones, when a reward came only sometimes. The mice pressed the lever more, not less. Uncertainty, it turns out, sharpens the hook. And humans are no different. This is why we check our phones without thinking, why we refresh, rewatch, re-enter. Not because we expect magic, but because we once found it there, or believe we might again. Every time we experience a small win, a heart on a photo, a reply to a message, a new follower, a bite of something sweet, our brain lays down a breadcrumb, a mark that says, this path was good. Return here. Over time, these paths become highways, paved with repetition, strengthened by emotion, and reinforced by reward. But here's where it becomes quiet and profound. We don't remember the breadcrumb. We remember the trail, and we follow it long after the reward has faded. You may not even want what the loop gives you anymore, but you still reach, still scroll, still check, because the loop is no longer about the outcome. It's about the anticipation, the whisper of maybe, duskery. This is the shadow of habit, when the loop runs without joy, but you follow it anyway. And yet, there's a kindness in knowing this, because if you can see the breadcrumbs, you can also choose not to follow them, not with force, not with resistance, but with awareness. Try this the next time you feel the pull to check, to reach, to scroll. Pause for just one breath. Ask yourself, what am I hoping to find? Not to stop yourself, but to see yourself. In that small moment, something powerful begins. You begin to notice the loop, and when you notice the loop begins to loosen. Because dopamine is not destiny, it is only suggestion, a quiet guide, and you are the walker. You choose the path. Next, we'll follow that path even deeper into the moments where choice disappears altogether, and we find ourselves not acting, but simply reacting, a mirror of past decisions played on repeat. AMT. In the fabric of your day, thousands of threads are woven by choices so small. They pass unnoticed. Which shoe you put on first, the pocket you reach for your keys, the tilt of your head when you greet someone. These aren't conscious decisions, not really. They are echoes, micro-decisions flowing from loops long laid down. The brain, magnificent in its efficiency, automates wherever it can. It has to. With billions of bits of information flooding your senses every second, it selects only a handful to show you and the rest. It handles silently, beneath the surface. Decisions are made in a fraction of a moment, quicker than thought, faster than awareness. So when you think, I chose this, it's often more accurate to say, this was chosen for me by the part of me that came before. This is the illusion of choice that we are always steering, when so often we are simply being carried. But that isn't a failure, it's a feature. Imagine if you had to consciously consider every action, every step, every breath. You'd be paralyzed, overwhelmed by your own existence. So the mind builds shortcuts, mental macros that quietly fire off when triggered. These are called if-then patterns. If you hear your phone buzz, then your hand moves. If you feel discomfort, then you reach for a distraction. If you're unsure, then you follow the familiar. At first, these patterns are helpful, protective, even wise. They free your conscious mind for the unexpected, the creative, the new. But over time, these shortcuts become ruts, familiar grooves carved deep, and what was once chosen becomes assumed. You may think you decided to check your messages, but perhaps your brain simply reacted to the silence. You may feel you chose to sit in the same spot, eat the same lunch, respond with the same phrase, but these actions often arise before the thought even forms. It's not that you're not in control, it's that control operates at many levels, and the one you're most familiar with, your conscious mind, is often not the one calling the shots. But here lies a quiet hope. You don't have to fight the illusion. You only have to see it, because the moment you notice a micro decision is the moment it becomes a real one. Awareness pulls it up from the depths, holds it to the light, and there in that breath of noticing the loop pauses. You return to the present, and the present is where real choice lives. It doesn't require force, only stillness, a gentle curiosity. Try this tomorrow. When you reach for your cup, pause just a moment before lifting it. Feel your hand. Notice its direction. This is no grand awakening, but it is an opening, a space in the loop. And from that space, a new path can begin. In our next section, we'll meet someone else who lives inside these loops, someone you see every day, and yet rarely greet with full awareness your reflections. There's a quiet moment, often passed without attention, when you first see your face in the mirror each morning. Perhaps it's in the haze between dream and duty, eyes still softened by sleep, light not yet sharp. But there, in that moment, something remarkable happens, something your brain does without asking. It remembers who you are. This is not the remembering of facts or names. It's deeper. It's the reactivation of identity. The mirror doesn't just reflect, it awakens. A loop stirs to life, one built not of glass, but of recognition, association, emotion. Scientists call this self-referential processing, a quiet process in the brain where seeing yourself even in a fleeting reflection reactivates a network of stories, habits, and emotional tones that define your sense of self. The you in your mind steps forward, not because the mirror has power, but because your brain expects it to. Like an actor called back to the stage, your face becomes the cue. The routines follow the kind of day you usually have, the moods you tend to feel, the version of yourself you default to, all re-enter, quietly, as your gaze settles on your own image. But this loop is older than modern mirrors. In ancient times, people saw themselves only in water or polished stone, and even then, rarely. So to see your reflection every morning is not just mundane, it's deeply novel in the history of being human. Yet your mind has adapted. Now, it uses that moment as a kind of psychological checkpoint. And what happens if you skip it? If you avoid mirrors on days you feel lost or low, the brain struggles. The loop is broken. The identity recall doesn't quite click into place. It's not just vanity, it's disorientation. The mirror is not neutral. It's not passive. It participates in the formation of your waking self. And because of that, how you look, or more accurately, how you feel you look, often ripples through the rest of your day. But here's the curious part. Your reflection is not objective. You never see your face directly, only its mirror image, filtered through memory, expectation, and mood. Your mind fills in the blanks, and often, it does so with yesterday's emotions. If you felt anxious yesterday, you may find anxiety in your eyes today. So when you stand before the mirror, you're not just looking, you're looping, seeing not just skin and hair and features, but layers of belief, layers of history, a pattern of identity that quietly reasserts itself, day after day. And yet, this loop, too, can be softened, not broken, not denied, but witnessed. Try this tomorrow morning. When you meet your own eyes in the mirror, don't rush past them, linger, even for a few seconds, not to judge or compare, but to greet, as if meeting an old friend, as if asking, "Who are you today?" In that small pause, the loop becomes lighter, the identity becomes less fixed, and in that looseness, there is room not just for memory, but for possibility. We'll keep wandering. Gently, in the next section, we'll follow a sound you know too well, a vibration. a ping, and explore how a simple notification awakens something ancient within you. It begins with a sound, maybe a gentle chime, a subtle buzz against the table, or the small flicker of a red dot on a screen. In the grand scheme of your day, it is nothing, barely a moment, but inside your mind, something ancient stirs, a subtle shift, a micro-alertness. Your attention pivots. This is the loop of anticipation, and it is one of the oldest, long before smartphones, long before machines. The brain was wired to respond to cues in the environment that signaled opportunity or danger. A rustle in the grass, a sudden bird call, the scent of rain. These were not distractions, they were signals for survival. Now, that same system listens to your phone. Notifications are not neutral. They are invitations. Invitations to check, to respond, to enter a space of uncertainty where something, anything could be waiting. And the brain, primed for potential, rewards you with a tiny burst of dopamine the moment you hear that sound. Not when you read the message, when you hear the cue. That's what makes it powerful and what makes it hard to resist. You're not opening your phone because you know what's there. You're opening it because you don't. Variable reward, the possibility of something good. Not the guarantee is the strongest behavioral driver ever studied in psychology. It's what keeps slot machines spinning, browsers refreshing, messages reopening. The not knowing is the hook. But there's something even quieter at play. The loop that lives beneath notifications is emotional regulation, often. We check our phones not to gain something, but to avoid something. A pause in conversation, a moment of boredom, an edge of loneliness. The phone becomes a balm, a bridge, a shield. The buzz becomes reassurance that we are still needed, still connected, still seen. In this way, the loop is not about technology. It is about emotion. The notification doesn't just call your attention, it offers relief. But the relief is fleeting, and the loop resets again and again. A loop of check, reward, relief, reset. A loop that feels voluntary until it doesn't. And yet, there is a gentler way to meet this loop. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with curiosity. Next time your phone buzzes, pause for one breath before reaching. Ask softly, what am I hoping to feel right now? Connection, excitement, escape. In that moment of asking, you awaken the watcher, the part of you that can observe the loop without being inside it. It doesn't mean you won't check the phone. You probably will, but you will do so with presence. And presence is the first step toward freedom. We'll stay soft and slow. In the next section, we'll steep ourselves in a ritual so familiar it fades into background, yet within it. The body finds rhythm, identity, and comfort. A simple cup, a sacred pause. We'll explore the quiet psychology behind your daily dance with coffee. Somewhere between waking and waking up, your hands move through a dance they've memorized. Water fills the kettle. Beans meet the grinder. The air shifts with scent, and for a few quiet minutes, you prepare not just a drink, but a space. Coffee, for many, is more than a beverage. It's a ritual, a soft ceremony of transition, a loop that marks the movement from one mental state to another, sleep into alertness, stillness into action. And though it may seem ordinary, even mundane, this small act holds surprising depth. The body responds not only to the caffeine, but to the anticipation, even before the first sip. The mind begins to shift. This is called conditioned response, the same way Pavlov's dogs began to salivate at the sound of a bell. Your body begins to awaken at the sound of water boiling, the hiss of steam, the scent of roasted beans. The coffee itself is only part of the loop. The rest is built of memory, movement, and meaning. Psychologists call this behavioral scaffolding, the way we build structure into our day through repeated actions. And for many, Coffee is the first pillar, the thing that says, now we begin. But the beauty is in the details, the quiet pleasure of stirring, the warmth in your hands, the pause before the first sip. These are moments of mindfulness, often unclaimed, moments when the world narrows into the present, into smell, texture, warmth. For some, the ritual is solitary, a morning companion, a moment of grounding before stepping into the swirl of the day. For others, it's social, a shared pause, a symbol of gathering, an unspoken agreement to slow down together. But regardless of how or when you drink it, coffee is rarely just about energy, so hype. It's about control, comfort, continuity. In a world that moves too fast, coffee moves at your pace. You prepare it, you hold it, you sip it when you choose, even if everything else is chaotic. This ritual remains, and in that consistency, the brain finds calm. It's no surprise, then, that missing your coffee can feel like imbalance, not just chemical, but emotional, a disorientation, as though the day never quite found its footing. But what if this familiar loop could be deepened, not changed, but inhabited more fully, tomorrow, or perhaps even now? Take your coffee as though it were a ceremony. Let your hands feel the cup. Let your breath follow the steam. Let your eyes rest on the surface before you sip. It's not about doing it differently. It's about doing it deliberately. And in that choice, a subtle shift begins. The loop doesn't disappear, but it becomes conscious, and consciousness turns habit into healing. In the next section, we'll descend into another familiar loop, one that forms not around warmth, but around discomfort, a pattern we build not to rise, but to retreat. We'll explore how stress can teach the mind to soothe itself in ways that are quiet, persistent, and sometimes quietly self-defeating. Stress arrives like weather, sometimes in flashes, like lightning, other times in slow, gray clouds that settle and stay. And when it comes, your body, ancient and wise, does not wait for permission. It begins to respond. A faster heartbeat, shallower breath, a quiet narrowing of attention. These are not just symptoms. They are signals, signals that you need comfort, grounding, safety, and so, almost without thinking, you reach for something that will soothe. Maybe it's a snack, a scroll through your phone, biting your nails, pacing, rewatching a show you've already memorized, rereading the same headlines, though nothing has changed. These are not bad habits. They are loops of self-soothing, psychological grooves etched by repetition, shaped, over time, by what once worked, even a little, to bring calm. At the heart of this is a simple truth: the brain wants relief, and it will seek it wherever it remembers finding it before. Even if that relief is short, even if it comes with consequences. This is why we sometimes cling to behaviors that hurt us, not because we enjoy them, but because they interrupt pain. If only for a moment, that interruption becomes a reward, and with each repetition, the loop deepens. It's a kind of learning, not logical learning, but emotional learning. The body remembers what brought peace, and it returns to it, again and again, with increasing speed and less conscious thought. Sometimes, this loop becomes invisible. You feel stress, and suddenly your hand is reaching. Your attention is hijacked. Your breath is shallow. You didn't choose. You reacted. But in these loops, there's also a whisper of unmet need, a part of you asking to be seen, to be comforted, not judged, not fixed, just held. This is where gentleness matters, because loops of self-soothing cannot be broken by force. They respond only to awareness and compassion. Try this the next time you feel the need to escape. Pause, not to resist, but to feel. Let the feeling rise. Without pushing it away, ask softly, what do I need right now? You may not know. That's okay. The asking is enough. It's a signal to your nervous system that someone is listening, that someone you is present, tabay, and presence interrupts the loop. Over time, new loops can form, softer ones, a walk instead of a scroll, a stretch instead of a snack, a breath instead of a reaction, not as punishment, but as kindness, as a new rhythm for an old need. Because soothing is not weakness, it's survival. The question is, only can we soothe in ways that also sustain? We'll keep moving gently. In the next section, we'll travel deeper into time to the roots of your earliest patterns, those quiet repetitions born not of adulthood, but childhood, loops that began long before you could name them, and which still echo through your days. Long before you could explain yourself, you learned how to be in the world, not through instruction, but through immersion. You watched, you absorbed, you adapted, and slowly, quietly, loops began to form emotional rhythms shaped by the people who raised you, the spaces you lived in, and the signals you were given. These early loops are not remembered in stories. They are remembered in reactions, in how your body tenses when someone raises their voice, in how quickly you try to please, to fix, to hide, in how silence makes you anxious or safe. The child mind is exquisitely tuned to connection. It scans for patterns not with logic, but with feeling. If affection followed achievement, a loop formed, I must perform to be loved. If chaos followed mistakes, another loop appeared, I must be perfect to be safe. And once these loops are laid, they rarely leave. They deepen. Even as adults, we return to them, not because they still serve us, but because they are familiar. They feel like home, even when they hurt. Consider how you respond to conflict. Do you freeze? Do you fight? Do you apologize even when it's not your fault? These aren't random behaviors. They're echoes, loops that began when you were too young to understand what you were learning. And here's something even more subtle. These loops often masquerade as personality. You might say, I'm just a people pleaser, or I hate confrontation. But often, these are not fixed traits. They're habits of protection, patterns wrapped around a younger self still trying to feel safe. But the brain is loyal. Once it learns that something worked even once, it will hold on. It will return to that loop when you're tired, overwhelmed, or uncertain, not because it's the best option, but because it's known. So the same arguments repeat, the same fears resurface, the same emotional reactions flare up even when you thought you'd outgrown them. This isn't regression. It's recognition, the past, resurfacing as reflex, statasdite, and yet, awareness is powerful. The moment you begin to see the loop, to trace it back, to name its shape, you create a space between the feeling and the action, a breath of choice. You can say, this is that old pattern again. And in saying it, you loosen its grip, you step out of the automatic, you reclaim the present. You don't have to rewrite your childhood to change the loops it left behind. You only need to meet them with compassion, to see the younger self beneath them and offer them something new. A pause, a breath, a different response. That's how old loops begin to fade, not by force, by softness. In the next section, we'll shift our gaze outward to the people around us, and to a strange, beautiful truth, how much of our daily behavior is not ours alone, but a mirror of others, a quiet dance of imitation, invisible and constant. You smile at someone, and they smile back. You yawn, and someone across the room does too. You hear someone laugh, truly laugh, and without meaning to. A smile rises on your face. This is no accident. This is the quiet work of mirror neurons, echoing the inner world of others before thought can catch up. Discovered in the early 1990s by researchers studying monkeys, mirror neurons are brain cells that activate both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. They don't just witness, they simulate. When you see, you feel. When you feel, you remember. And when you remember, you repeat. In this way, we are never quite alone in our habits. We carry the gestures, the tones, the rhythms of those around us, parents, teachers, friends, strangers. Their patterns echo within our own, unconsciously, effortlessly, continuously. This is why certain moods feel contagious, why spending time with someone anxious can tighten your own chest, why calmness in a room seems to spread like warmth. We loop together silently, socially shaping and reshaping each other with every glance, every gesture, every small repeated interaction, i.e., you may not realize how often you mirror, the way you nod when someone speaks, the phrases you pick up, the posture you adopt. These are not affectations, they are adaptive synchronizations. Your brain trying to belong. And yet, this mirroring is not limited to behavior. It extends inward into emotion, belief, and even self-perception. If someone sees you as capable, you begin to act with more confidence. If someone treats you as fragile, you may start to feel smaller. The loop of self is quietly co-authored by others. But this mirroring is not manipulation. It is connection, a survival trait. The nervous system evolved to attune itself to those nearby to detect safety, threat, approval, to feel as others feel. Because in our deepest biology, we survive not alone, but together. And so, the loops you think of as personal are often shared, socially rehearsed, emotionally synchronized, a collective choreography, played out in office meetings, dinner tables, subway rides. This is why certain environments can trigger old behaviors, why returning to your childhood home can make you feel like a teenager again. The social mirrors return, and so does the loop. But this, too, is a doorway. By becoming aware of the patterns you mirror, you can begin to choose which ones to keep. Try this: notice who you become around different people, not what you say, but how you feel in your body. Do you tense? Do you rush? Do you soften? These shifts are clues, whispers from your mirror system, hinting at loops not fully your own. And in noticing them, you begin to reclaim yourself. You learn to reflect not just others, but your own presence back into the room. Next, we'll follow the loop inward again into the language of thought itself, the silent voice in your mind that sounds like you, but may carry the phrases, beliefs, and judgments of many voices long gone. Inside your mind, a voice is always speaking. It narrates your morning, comments on your choices, quietly shapes the mood of your day. This inner voice can be kind or sharp, hurried or soft, and though it feels like you intimately, unmistakably you, it's often anything but original. This is the loop of inner speech, a pattern of language so familiar it becomes invisible, but within it lies the blueprint of how you think, feel, and relate to yourself. From early childhood, you began absorbing the words of others, not just their meaning, but their tone, their rhythm, their emotional weight. Parents, teachers, peers, their language entered your ears and, over time, took root behind your eyes. Now, it whispers to you in private moments, in hesitation before a risk, in the echo after a mistake, in the quiet self-congratulation after a job well done. Much of this inner speech is useful. It organizes your plans, helps you rehearse conversations, sort your emotions, but some of it quietly, repetitively keeps you inside loops that no longer serve you. Phrases like, "I always mess this up," or "I'm not good enough," or "Why did I do that again?" don't just express doubt. They shape it, they reinforce it, and the more often they repeat, the stronger the loop becomes. Psychologists refer to this as cognitive rehearsal. When thoughts are replayed, they become more accessible, more likely to resurface, like a well-worn path through a forest. The route becomes easy to follow, even if it leads nowhere new. And here's the twist: the brain doesn't easily distinguish between words said out loud and those said silently. Inner criticism activates similar neural pathways as external scolding, which means, in many ways, your inner voice is your environment, Sayud. So what happens when that voice is harsh, when it's hurried, anxious, unforgiving? You live inside a loop of stress. Even in silence, you carry noise within, even in stillness. But this loop, like all loops, can be seen, and once seen, it can be softened. Try this the next time your inner voice speaks sharply. Pause. Imagine those words coming from someone you love. Would you let them be spoken? Would you defend them? Offer comfort instead. You don't have to silence the inner voice. That isn't the goal. The goal is to speak back, to introduce new language, language rooted not in perfection, but in kindness. Over time, this rewrites the loop. Your inner monologue becomes a dialogue spacious, compassionate, evolving, and slowly, gently, the voice becomes a true companion, not a critic. Next, we'll move from language to movement and follow your footsteps down the same path you always take. We'll explore why you walk the same routes, take the same turns, and what that reveals about the mind's quiet craving for the familiar. There's a comfort in the familiar. The sidewalk your feet know by heart, the staircase you climb without thinking, the corners you turn, day after day. As though pulled by a quiet thread, you may not have planned the path, yet it persists. Intact. This is the geography of habit, the mental map etched by repetition, reinforced not only by ease but by something deeper, the brain's yearning for the predictable. Each time you take the same route to work, to the store, around your block, your brain strengthens a loop of expectation. It's not just your legs moving forward, it's your nervous system seeking stability. Familiarity soothes the system. In unfamiliar terrain, the brain lights up with alertness. It scans for novelty, for potential threats or surprises. This uses energy, so whenever it can, the mind returns to the known, known sights, known steps, known outcomes, and the pattern builds quietly, without conscious permission, until one day you realize you've walked this way every day for months or years, and you don't quite remember why. This loop, though comforting, has a curious side effect. It dims awareness. When your route is automatic, your senses drift inward. You stop seeing the trees. You don't notice the light changing on the pavement. The moment becomes background. And yet, the loop remains, because on some level, it works. It gives the illusion of control, of mastery, of being at home in the world. But the real magic comes when you interrupt it gently, without reason. Take a different path, cross the street sooner. Walk down an alley you've passed 100 times but never explored. Feel the texture of not knowing what comes next. Suddenly, awareness sharpens. Your mind returns to the present, the loop stutters, and in its place, presence appears. Psychologists call this pattern interruption, a small, intentional disruption in a well-worn sequence. These interruptions awaken neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, to grow, to see again. You don't need to overhaul your entire routine. A single turn can shift something inside. A single moment of noticing the color of a door you've passed every day and never really seen can open space in your looped perception. The point is not to break the habit, it's to remember that the habit is there. To become the one who chooses the path, not just the one who follows it. Next, we'll explore a newer kind of path, one you travel not with your feet, but with your thumbs. The loop of swiping, scrolling, refreshing, a digital rhythm that feels modern, but runs on ancient instincts. Your thumb moves almost on its own, a slow flick upward. The screen refreshes, a new image, another flick, another post, another flick. Maybe something interesting, maybe not. It doesn't matter. You're inside the loop now. This loop, the swipe, the scroll. The tap feels distinctly modern, a digital rhythm woven into our hands, but beneath the glowing screen and the endless content lies something much older. An instinct carved into the brain across millennia, the search for patterns. Long before social media, long before electricity, your ancestors scanned their environment for signs, for food, for threats, for changes in the weather. Their eyes moved across the horizon. Their minds constantly asked, what's new, what's next? Today, your thumb asks the same thing. Each swipe is a question. Is there something here for me? A distraction, a connection, a little reward. The brain answers with a drip of dopamine, not because you found something valuable, but because you might. This loop thrives on uncertainty. You don't know what's coming. That's the hook. A neurological slot machine, nestled in your palm. It's easy to feel shame around this, to believe you're wasting time, being mindless, but in truth, you're responding to one of the brain's most fundamental drives, the search for meaning, novelty, and stimulation. The scroll loop also gives you something else, a sense of control. In a world that moves unpredictably, swiping offers choice. You decide what to see next. You decide when to stop, or at least, it feels that way. But the loop is sticky, because each time you swipe and don't find satisfaction, the brain wants to try again. Maybe the next post, maybe the next article, maybe just one more. This is where the loop becomes subtle and powerful. The act is simple. The habit is deep. But you can meet it with awareness, not to break the loop, but to walk beside it. Try this before your next scroll. Pause for just 3 seconds. Ask yourself gently, what am I hoping to feel right now? Not what you're looking for, but what you're feeling beneath the action. Boredom, loneliness, curiosity, a need for quiet. That question turns the loop into a mirror. You begin to see what's moving you, not just what you're moving through. And in that reflection, there's a choice. Maybe you keep scrolling, but now you're awake inside the motion. Or maybe you pause, breathe, let the silence settle. The point isn't to stop using your phone. It's to stop being used by it. Next, we'll follow a quieter loop, one that often disguises itself as productivity, the soft, endless echo of doing just one more thing, a loop that begins with good intentions, but often leads to exhaustion. It starts innocently, a task almost done, a message almost sent, a dish left in the sink, just one more thing. You whisper to yourself a phrase so quiet, so reasonable, it rarely raises suspicion. But this phrase is a doorway, a soft entry into a loop not of urgency, but of inertia. One small task leads to another, and another. The day stretches thin, the night begins to blur, rest moves further away, always waiting on the other side of one more thing. At the heart of this loop is the mind's deep craving for closure. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember and mentally rehearse incomplete tasks more than completed ones. A kind of mental itch. Your brain wants things wrapped, tucked, and finished. And so you return to the list. You respond to the email. You straighten the pile. You clean the corner. Not because you want to, but because your brain seeks relief from the tension of incompletion. But here's the gentle irony. The more you do, the more you see to do. Action creates awareness. You vacuum one room, and suddenly notice the clutter in the next. You finish one message, and remember 3 more. The list regenerates. The loop renews. This loop disguises itself as productivity. It wears the mask of discipline, but often, it's driven not by purpose, but by discomfort and aversion to stillness, to stopping, to the subtle anxiety of undone things. And yet, not all things must be finished at once. Not all tension is a problem to solve. Sometimes, what you're truly longing for isn't completion, it's permission. Permission to rest even when the floor isn't swept, to exhale even when the inbox isn't empty. This is where awareness becomes a soft key. Try this the next time you whisper. Just one more thing. Pause. Notice where the urge lives in your body. Is it in your chest, your shoulders? Is it sharp or tight or buzzing? Ask gently, if I don't do this now, what feeling am I afraid of sitting with? You may find it's not the task that holds power, it's the emotion behind it. And emotions, unlike lists, don't need to be managed. They need to be met. By noticing the loop, you offer yourself an exit, a way back to balance. You learn that unfinished is not the same as unworthy, that rest is not a reward, it's a rhythm. Next, we'll walk into one of the mind's quieter traps, the loop of regret, a cycle not of doing, but of remembering, of turning over the past like a stone, again and again, searching for relief in the ache of what cannot be changed. Regret is a soft ache, not sharp like fear, nor hot like anger. It's slower, quieter. It lingers in the background, like a memory you keep glancing at out of the corner of your mind. And yet, for something so subtle, regret can be astonishingly persistent. You think about what you said or didn't say, what you did or didn't do, the job you turned down, the friend you let drift away, the moment you froze when you meant to speak. You replay it, and then you replay it again. This is the loop of regret, a mental cycle that feels like reflection, but is often something else rehearsal. In psychological terms, this is called counterfactual thinking, imagining how things might have gone differently. What if I had just... The brain runs simulations, rewriting the past in endless variations. It does this for a reason. Regret can be instructive. It helps us learn. It shows us our values. It points to the gap between who we were and who we want to be, but the mind, being what it is, rarely stops at learning. It circles, loops, lingers. Over time, the regret becomes less about the event and more about the emotion. The brain begins to associate certain memories with pain, and then it returns to them not to solve them, but to feel them again and again. This is where regret becomes rehearsal, a strange performance of suffering. You're not just remembering, you're reliving, not because you want to, but because your brain believes it's doing something, preparing, preventing. But the past cannot be rehearsed into peace. It cannot be perfected by thinking harder. And sometimes, without realizing it, we begin to need the regret. It becomes a signal of caring. If I stop regretting this, it means I don't care, but this, too, is a loop of self-punishment in the name of meaning. So how do you soften it? How do you exit the loop without denying the emotions? Not by force, but by returning to the body. Try this when a regret surfaces. Don't chase it, don't follow the story. Instead, pause, feel where it lives. Is it behind your eyes, in your chest, in your stomach? Breathe into that place, not to fix it, just to acknowledge it. Say, gently, this happened. I didn't like how it felt, and I'm still learning. Because you are. The goal isn't to forget, it's to loosen the loop, to let regret be a teacher, not a jailer. And from that place, you can begin to choose a different relationship with your past, one rooted not in pain, but in presence. Next, we'll explore how certain loops bypass thought, entirely awakened not by story, but by scent and sound. triggers so subtle they dissolve time and bring the past rushing into the present. You're walking through a store, not thinking of anything in particular. When it happens, a familiar scent catches you. It's not loud, not even clear, but suddenly, without warning, you are somewhere else, a different year, a different version of yourself. It might be the perfume your grandmother wore, the smell of chalk and old books from a childhood classroom, the distant trace of sunscreen and sea salt. Lice. And just like that, the loop opens. Scent is the most direct route to memory. Unlike sights or words, smells don't pass through language first. They travel through the olfactory bulb, a small, ancient structure in the brain that connects directly to the amygdala and hippocampus, the parts of the brain responsible for emotion and memory. This is why smell doesn't just remind you of a memory, it returns you to it. You feel not just the place, but the feeling, the texture of time, a loop not made of logic, but sensation. Sound, too, has this power. A certain song, the jingle of an old commercial, the hush of rain against a roof. These are loops your brain has stored, sometimes without your knowledge. You don't have to try to remember. The memory arrives uninvited, and it comes whole, wrapped in feeling, context, atmosphere. Psychologists call this involuntary memory recall, but maybe it's more beautiful to think of it as a portal. Your mind, in its quiet way, has kept a record, not of dates or data, but of feeling, the scent of a meal shared long ago, the sound of someone's laugh who's no longer here. These loops are not mistakes, they are evidence of your depth, of how the smallest details once mattered enough to imprint themselves into your nervous system. And when they resurface, they are not trying to tell you something new only to remind you that the past is not gone. It lives in fragments, folded into your senses, then. Sometimes this feels sweet, other times it aches. Both are valid. So when a scent surprises you, or a song catches you off guard, don't rush to explain it. Let it wash over you. Let it speak in the wordless language of memory. You don't have to chase the story. The loop will unfold on its own. Try this if a smell or sound stirs something in you this week. Pause. Notice what part of you it touches. What era, what version of you. Offer that version a silent nod, a breath of acknowledgement. Because memory is not linear. It is layered, and these loops involuntary, unexpected, are not distractions. They are reminders of your continuity. Next, we'll step back into the present, into the quiet space between two people, where eyes meet. We'll explore the subtle loop of eye contact, and how it builds trust, tension, and unseen rhythms between minds. There's a moment in every conversation brief, delicate when your eyes meet someone else's. It might last a second, it might stretch longer. But in that gaze, something ancient awakens, something wordless. Eye contact is one of the most intimate loops in human behavior. It connects you, aligns you, places you within the emotional field of another person. And yet, it's not always easy. Some people seek it, others avoid it, but no one is untouched by it. When you lock eyes with someone, your brain lights up in places language cannot reach. The amygdala responds, measuring emotion and intention. Mirror neurons fire, mapping their expression onto your own nervous system. In milliseconds, your body begins to feel what they feel. This is the loop of attunement, the quiet rhythm of presence passed between two people without a single word. Infants do this instinctively, long before they can speak. They seek out eyes. It's how they recognize safety, joy, comfort. It's how they learn to trust. That loop begins early, and it never truly leaves. But eye contact is not just about connection. It's also about vulnerability. To meet someone's gaze is to let yourself be seen, To admit, without saying it, I am here, and I see you. This is why it can feel overwhelming, or intense, or oddly charged, even in silence. And yet, when two people maintain soft, open eye contact, something remarkable happens. Their breathing begins to synchronize, their heart rates align, their nervous systems gently calibrate to each other. You've felt this before, maybe in a conversation that left you feeling lighter, or during a moment of shared laughter, where nothing needed to be explained. These are signs the loop was working, building a bridge between minds. But the loop can also falter. If someone's gaze feels invasive, or if it's absent entirely, the mind takes notice, it adjusts, it protects, it reverts to older scripts assuming threat, disengaging, or withdrawing. So the loop of eye contact is not about staring. It's about presence, about meeting, not watching. It's a subtle dance of offering and receiving. Try this in your next conversation. Notice your own gaze. Is it steady or flickering? Are you truly seeing or scanning? Can you let your eyes rest gently, without pressure? And more importantly, how do you feel when someone truly looks at you not with scrutiny, but with interest, with care? That feeling soft, human, unspoken is the loop completing, the nervous system saying, I am here with you now. Next, we'll explore another loop of awareness, one that lives in a glance at your wrist, your screen, your wall, a loop so quick and frequent you hardly notice it. And yet, it reveals how deeply time and control are intertwined in the human mind. You glance at the clock, perhaps without meaning to, perhaps without even truly seeing the numbers. It's a reflex now, a flick of the eyes toward the phone screen, the corner of the laptop, the glowing digits by the bedside. You aren't just checking the time. You're entering a loop. This small act, performed dozens of times a day, carries more than information. It carries emotion, a soft undercurrent of urgency, or relief, or restlessness, a whisper, am I where I'm supposed to be? Time, once measured by the sun and the seasons, now ticks constantly in your periphery. It's no longer an environment you inhabit. It's a resource you manage, track, and chase. And in doing so, you've created a subtle loop of self-surveillance. Each glance at the time is a micro-evaluation. Am I late? Am I early? Am I doing enough? Do I have time? And while these questions may seem harmless, over time, they weave tension into your day. The loop becomes a rhythm of pressure, not dictated by necessity, but by habit. The strange thing is often, when you check the time, you're not even expecting to change what you're doing. You're just seeking orientation, a mental compass reading, a reassurance that you're in control. But here's the quiet irony. The more often we check, the more fragmented our presence becomes. The more we focus on time, the less we occupy the moment we're in. This loop, like so many others, is not wrong. It's protective. The brain evolved to seek predictability, and time offers that. Schedules, appointments, countdowns, they give structure, but structure without presence becomes a cage. So, what would it look like to soften this loop? Not to stop checking time, but to bring awareness into the act. Try this the next time you feel the urge to look at the clock. Pause. Ask yourself first, what do I hope to feel by knowing the time is its certainty? Permission to rest. A sense of progress. Then, if you still want to check, go ahead, but do it slowly. Let your eyes move there with intention. Notice how that 1 second act shapes your body. Does your chest tighten? Does your breath change? Does your mind speed up or settle? These are clues, quiet invitations to return not just to the hour, but to now. Because time will always move forward, but your attention, that belongs to you. In our next section, we'll explore another quiet loop of recognition, one that emerges not from clocks or calendars, but from faces, the people you know, the ones you love, and how their presence quietly reactivates emotional patterns you've carried for years. There's something mysterious about how we feel when we see someone we know, even before a word is spoken. The body reacts, the shoulders settle or tense, the breath deepens or shortens, 1,000 tiny adjustments, guided by nothing more than a glance. Familiar faces don't just remind us of people, they awaken emotional scripts, quiet loops laid down over time. When you see someone you care about, your nervous system doesn't ask, "Who is this?" It asks, "How do I feel around them?" And often, that answer is automatic, not formed in the moment, but replayed from memory. This is the loop of emotional association. Just as a scent can transport you back in time, so can a person's presence. A loved one's smile may instantly soften your heart. A coworker's glance may trigger stress, not because of what's happening now, but because of what's happened before. We are, in this way, creatures of context. The brain stores not just who someone is, but how they've made you feel consistently, repeatedly, across time. Each interaction lays down a thread, and those threads braid together into a loop, a kind of emotional shortcut. So when you re-encounter someone, the loop reactivates. You may feel safe, joyful, anxious, or defensive often before any conscious thought arrives. This can be comforting. Around people we trust, the loop brings ease. We don't have to perform. We simply are. But it can also be limiting, because sometimes what we feel around someone is not about them, it's about who we were when we first knew them. A sibling might still make you feel like the younger version of yourself, even if you've outgrown those patterns. A friend from childhood might stir laughter that no longer fits. And yet, the loop persists. The presence of the familiar reawakens familiar ways of being. But here's the quiet truth. The loop isn't fixed. It's relational, which means it can be changed. Try this the next time you're with someone who feels familiar. Notice how your body responds in the first few seconds, before words, before roles, before memory takes over. Ask gently, is this the version of me I want to be with them? Not with judgment, but with curiosity. That pause gives you space, a breath between past and present. Because in that space, you can begin to shift the loop, not by changing the other person, but by showing up differently yourself. Slowly, over time, the emotional script rewrites itself, and the loop softens. In our next section, we'll explore a deeper, more internal loop, one rooted in morality and self-perception, the voice inside that says should, and how it shapes the quiet tension between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be. There's a word that drifts through your thoughts more often than you realize should. I should be working. I should be more present. I should have handled that differently. It arrives softly, like a whisper dressed as reason. It doesn't shout, but it lingers. And behind each should is something else, a quiet loop of internal judgment. The voice of the inner critic doesn't appear overnight. It's built slowly, layer by layer, through years of expectation, comparison, and cultural conditioning. At first, it may have sounded like a parent's disappointment, a teacher's warning, a peer's disapproval. Eventually, it became your own voice, or at least, one that sounds like your own. This loop is deeply moral in nature, not about ethics, but about identity. Should speaks to an invisible standard who you believe you must be in order to be enough. And each time that standard is missed, the loop tightens. The inner critic wakes, not to punish, but to correct, to push you back toward that imagined ideal. But here's the quiet truth most of the time. This ideal is vague, undefined. It shifts as you approach it. The more you do, the more you believe you should do, the closer you get, the further it seems. And the loop continues. You push, you perform, You produce, and still, the inner voice says, not quite. Psychologists call this self-discrepancy theory the tension between your actual self and your ideal self. When the gap feels wide, anxiety, guilt, or shame arise. The brain, in turn, tries to close the gap by repeating behaviors it believes will restore worth. But often, those behaviors don't bring relief because the loop isn't designed for satisfaction, it's designed for correction. For this, and still, it's not your enemy. This voice, however sharp, was born of a desire to do well, to be loved, to belong. It's trying in its own clumsy way to protect you. So what happens if you meet it not with resistance, but with compassion? Try this the next time you catch yourself thinking, I should. Pause, replace it gently with I could rest, I could respond differently, I could take a breath. Notice how that shift opens space. Should is rigid, could is expansive. It turns demand into possibility. Over time, this small change softens the inner critic. The loop loosens. You begin to rewrite your standards not from pressure, but from presence, by tortuum. And when you do fall short, as all humans do, you learn to respond not with self-punishment, but self-inquiry. What part of me felt afraid? What was I trying to protect? What do I need now? These questions don't fuel the loop. They free you from it. In our next section, we'll turn toward a more modern phenomenon, one born of time scarcity, rebellion, and quiet desperation. A loop many know, but few name the strange and soothing ritual of staying up too late, just to reclaim a sense of self. The clock reads later than you'd planned. The day has folded itself up. The world is quiet, and still. You stay awake, scrolling, watching, wandering. You know you'll be tired tomorrow. You may even feel it now, but a voice inside whispers, just a little longer. And so, you stay, not out of joy, but defiance. Not because you're avoiding sleep, but because sleep feels like surrender. This is revenge bedtime procrastination, a term born not from science, but from experience. It describes the quiet rebellion against time that feels stolen, a loop that says, this is my time now. I won't give it away. During the day, your schedule may belong to others. Work, family, obligations. Your time is divided, structured, spoken for. So when night arrives and silence falls, a different part of you rises. It's the part that longs to feel autonomous, unobserved, unrushed. Even if it's just scrolling through videos or reading one more chapter, even if it's doing nothing at all, the point isn't productivity, it's reclamation. Psychologists describe this as a self-regulatory failure. But that's only part of the truth. The deeper story is emotional. This loop is not about poor planning, it's about unmet needs for rest. Yes, but also for freedom, play, stillness, pleasure. When those needs go unacknowledged during the day, they return at night dressed in resistance. You may find yourself doing things you don't even enjoy, watching shows you're not invested in, scrolling through content you barely register, not because these things matter, but because they feel like yours. But the loop is bittersweet, because what you gain in freedom, you often lose in rest. And so, the next day begins already threadbare. The cycle continues. So how do you meet this loop with kindness? Not blame. Not by shaming yourself into an earlier bedtime. Not by replacing the late-night ritual with productivity. But by asking, what does this part of me need that it isn't getting during the day? Try this before the night pulls you in. Take 10 quiet minutes for something truly nourishing. Not just a distraction, but something that feeds you. Music, journaling, a bath, a breath. Offer yourself a moment that feels like choice, not obligation. And if you do stay up, do it consciously. Don't sneak it. Own it. Let it be your decision, not your escape. Even that shift in awareness can begin to unwind the loop. Because what you truly crave is not more time, but more presence within the time you already have. In our next section, we'll explore another common loop, one that wears the costume of connection, but often masks a deeper discomfort: the habit of complaining, and why it can feel strangely comforting to repeat what hurts. There's a kind of relief in saying what's wrong, in naming the flaw, the frustration, the thing that didn't go the way it should have. The traffic was awful. I barely slept. They always do this. Complaining is often dismissed as negativity, a flaw of character, a habit to break. But beneath its surface lies something quieter, more human. Complaining isn't just expression, it's connection. It's an attempt to be seen. When we complain, we are not only reporting a situation, we're revealing our emotional weather, a way of saying, I was uncomfortable, or I felt powerless, without having to name the vulnerable truth beneath it. And over time, this becomes a loop. The complaint brings a small reward: attention, agreement, even sympathy. The brain notices this. It remembers. So the next time discomfort arises, it reaches for the same path. Say it again. Maybe this time, someone will really understand. Neuroscientists have found that repeated complaints strengthen neural pathways related to negativity. The more you focus on what's wrong, the more efficiently your brain finds similar patterns. Like tuning a radio. It becomes better at picking up the static and worse at hearing the music. But it's important to understand the desire to complain comes from a real place, a desire to express pain, to connect, to release. The trouble arises when the loop becomes automatic, when the complaint is no longer tied to true emotion, but becomes the default way of relating. You begin to expect disappointment before it arrives. You find what's wrong in what used to bring joy, and slowly, the loop becomes a lens filtering every moment through what's missing. And yet, there's another way, one that doesn't demand silence, but offers choice. Try this the next time you feel the urge to complain. Pause, ask softly, what am I really feeling underneath this? Is it exhaustion? Grief? A need to be acknowledged? Then ask, what would I say if I wasn't trying to get agreement but understanding? That shift can change everything, because the core desire behind complaining isn't to dwell on the problem. It's to be met, to be known. And when you bring awareness into the loop, you begin to choose how you speak about your life, not with denial, but with depth. Complaints can still come, but now they arrive as part of a fuller picture, not the whole story, just one voice among many. In our next section, we'll examine a loop shaped not by emotion, but identity, the subtle ritual of shopping, not just to acquire, but to affirm who you believe you are or wish you could become. You walk through a store, physical or digital, and something catches your eye. A sweater, a book, a pair of shoes. It's not just a product. It's a feeling, a possibility. You imagine wearing it, holding it, being seen with it, and for a moment, you don't just want the item, you want the version of yourself it promises. And I guess this is the shopping loop, not just the pursuit of objects, but of identity. A quiet, repeating pattern where we try to assemble ourselves one choice at a time. You may believe you're buying things, but often you're buying symbols, representations of comfort, success, creativity, freedom, even if the item never quite delivers. The hope it offers is momentarily real. This loop is subtle. It's not just about the things you bring home, it's about how the mind creates stories around them. So, this will make me look more confident. This will motivate me to start. This will show them I've changed. In this way, shopping becomes an internal conversation, not about money or need, but about self-definition. Psychologists refer to this as symbolic self-completion. When we feel uncertain about who we are, we often seek external markers to reaffirm identity, a new outfit for a new job, a certain brand to reflect a belief. And sometimes, that can be empowering. Clothes that express your truth, objects that support your growth, a well-chosen tool that helps you become more of who you want to be. But when the loop turns unconscious, it becomes less about enhancement and more about escape. You begin to reach for things, not because they align with your values, but because they fill a brief emotional gap. Shopping becomes a way to soothe uncertainty, to distract from discomfort, to chase a fleeting sense of change. The loop is reinforced each time the purchase brings a moment of excitement, the anticipation, the arrival, the unboxing, but then, often quietly, comes the drop, the realization that the self you imagined is still just out of reach. And so the loop repeats, but like all loops, this one can be softened not by denying desire, but by meeting it more fully. Try this the next time you feel the pull to buy something. Pause, ask, what part of me is doing the shopping? Is it the part that feels inspired or the part that feels not quite enough? Ask, to what identity am I trying to affirm with this? The point is not to stop buying things. The point is to bring presence to the moment of wanting. Because when you do, shopping transforms from reaction to ritual, a conscious expression, rather than a substitute for self. You begin to see that you are not incomplete, not waiting to be assembled. You are already whole. The things you choose can support that wholeness, but they do not create it. In our next section, we'll explore how even the smallest shift, a breath, a pause, a question can unravel years of habit. We'll explore how loops don't have to be broken with force, but loosened with gentleness. Not all change begins with a thunderclap. Sometimes, it starts with a pause, a single breath before you act, a moment of noticing, the soft space between impulse and intention. This is the art of gentle disruption, the quiet, compassionate way to step outside a loop, not by breaking it, but by softening it. Many people believe change requires willpower, control, even punishment. But the truth is, loops resist force. They were built to protect you, to make life easier, more predictable. And when you try to shatter them, they tighten. But when you notice them kindly, curiously, they begin to loosen. Gentle disruption isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's the decision to walk a different way home, just to feel the air on your face in a new direction. It's the choice to sit in silence for 5 minutes instead of reaching for your phone. It's whispering. What do I really need right now before falling into the usual rhythm? Each of these moments is small, almost forgettable, but like drops of water on stone, they slowly reshape the patterns. Neuroscience supports this. Every time you make a new choice, however slight, your brain creates or strengthens a new neural pathway. It may be fragile at first, but with repetition, it grows stronger. And each time you return to awareness, you're not failing, you're reinforcing. Like practicing a new instrument, the point isn't perfection, it's persistence. You may find that the loop still returns. That's okay. Loops are patient, but so are you. The practice isn't to eliminate them all, it's to see them, to feel where they begin, to gently open space inside them. Try this. Choose one loop, one small, repeating pattern in your life. Don't try to change it yet, just observe it. Track it like a bird watcher, patiently and without judgment. Ask, when does this begin? What need is it trying to meet? What would happen if I paused before following it? In asking, you shift from participant to witness, from automation to presence. And in presence, there is power, not the loud kind, the deep kind. Because in noticing a loop, you begin to reclaim your freedom, not by resisting what you've been doing, but by expanding what's possible. In our final section, we'll step back, zoom out, and meet the part of you that has been with us this whole time, the watcher, the witness, the quiet presence behind every loop, the one who sees, who knows, who remembers, beneath every habit, behind every impulse. Beyond each loop you've followed or fallen into, there is a presence, a soft, steady awareness, the part of you that watches. It doesn't judge, it doesn't push, it simply notices, the breath rising, the hand reaching, the thought repeating, the loop unfolding. This is the observer, the quiet witness within, so you've met it before, even if you didn't know its name. When you catch yourself mid-thought and smile, when you hear your inner critic and choose kindness instead, when you pause before reacting, that space. That is you, the part of you that's not tangled in the loop, but gently aware of it. And this presence is always there, behind the doing, beneath the noise, not a voice, but a listening, not a command, but a noticing. Neuroscientists might call it metacognition, thinking about thinking, but that label is far too small. Because this watcher is not just a function, it's a kind of wisdom. It doesn't need to fix everything. It doesn't need to stop every habit. Its gift is simple and profound. It sees clearly, and in that seeing, the loop loses some of its hold. You are not your thoughts. You are not your impulses. You are not your loops. You are the one who sees them. And in this moment right now, that part of you is awake. You've followed us through this journey, section by section, breath by breath, and something in you has been watching, listening, opening. That watching presence is not trying to change you. It's reminding you that you are more than your patterns, that underneath even the oldest loops, there is a quiet spaciousness, a choice, a freedom. Try this sometime soon. When you're caught in a loop, reaching, reacting, rushing pause for just one breath, not to stop, not to correct, just to witness. Say inwardly, I see this, and let that be enough. Because every time you return to awareness, you return to yourself, not the patterned self, not the performing self, the deep self, the witnessing self. And in that return, the loop is no longer a trap. It becomes a teacher. Thank you for walking with me through these quiet patterns of the mind, for trusting me to wander with you into your own unseen rhythms. If this journey has brought you softness, or clarity, or even a single moment of stillness, I am grateful. Wherever you are tonight, may your loops be light, your breath slow, and your witnessing self ever near. Until next time, rest, and stay curious.